The State Bar disciplinary hearing room felt suffocating, as I sat facing a panel of judges who would decide my fate. My own brother Tommy stood at the witness podium, pointing an accusatory finger directly at me. "She's pretending to be a lawyer," he declared confidently to the committee. "No way she passed the bar." Behind him, my parents nodded in agreement, their faces showing nothing but determination to see me destroyed. They had submitted a formal complaint, calling me a fraud, a fake someone who had been deceiving clients for years. I remained silent, watching my family systematically tear apart everything I had worked for. Then, presiding Judge Harrison opened my file, stopped breathing for a moment, and looked up with confusion. "Mr. Josh," he said slowly, "you argued before me last year. The Fitzgerald case. I called it the most brilliant defense I've seen in 28 years. Why is your family claiming you're not qualified to practice law?" The judge's words hung in the air like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. As I sat there, memories flooded back to 3 years ago, when I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law School. I remembered the pride in my parents' eyes when I walked across that stage, the tears streaming down my mother's face as I received my degree. I had scored the highest on the state bar exam in Ohio's history, a fact that made local newspapers and brought recognition to our small town of Cedar Falls. After my clerkship with federal judge Margaret Stevens, I could have joined any prestigious firm in New York or Washington. Goldman Sachs offered me a starting salary of $250,000. Morrison and Associates in Chicago wanted me for their litigation team, but I chose to come home instead to open a small practice above Peterson's hardware store on Main Street. I wanted to help working-class families who couldn't afford fancy lawyers, people like Mrs. Patterson, the 73-year-old widow who came to me when predatory lenders tried to steal her home through fraudulent mortgage modifications. I remembered hanging my Harvard diploma on the wall of Josh Manning Law Office with such pride. The gold lettering gleamed in the afternoon sunlight that streamed through those old windows. My father Carl had helped me move furniture that first day, his calloused hands from 30 years as an insurance claims adjuster carefully positioning my desk. My mother Sarah brought homemade cookies for my opening day, bustling around the small space with genuine excitement about her son's achievement. My brother Tommy seemed happy too initially. He was 2 years older, but had dropped out of community college after failing basic math courses. Now he worked construction good honest work that our grandfather would have respected. Tommy even brought his crew by to see my office that first week, showing off his little brother the lawyer to his buddies. But something changed as months passed, and my practice grew successful. The warm family dinners became tense affairs, filled with uncomfortable silences. When I mentioned winning cases or helping clients, conversations would shift abruptly to other topics. My success defending Mrs. Patterson from foreclosure made the Cedar Falls Gazette's front page, but nobody in my family congratulated me. Looking back, I should have recognized the signs. When I bought my first decent car, a modest Honda Accord, Tommy made snide comments about fancy lawyers, forgetting where they came from. When I moved into a nicer apartment across town, my mother stopped visiting, claiming she felt uncomfortable in such an upscale neighborhood. My father grew increasingly quiet during our weekly dinners, responding to my stories about work with grunts or subject changes. The turning point came 6 months ago, when I successfully defended Bobby Richardson, a local mechanic wrongfully accused of vehicular assault. The case required months of investigation, expert witnesses, and complex legal arguments about mechanical failure versus driver error. When the jury delivered a not guilty verdict, Richardson broke down crying in my arms, knowing he'd been saved from 10 years in prison for something he didn't do. The victory felt like everything I'd studied for everything I'd dreamed about as a kid watching courtroom dramas and imagining myself fighting for justice. But when I got home that night, expecting to celebrate with family, I found them watching television in stony silence. Tommy looked up with cold eyes and said, "Must be nice having life handed to you on a silver platter." My parents said nothing, but their expressions echoed his resentment. I realized then that my education, My success, my choice to use my skills helping others instead of chasing money, somehow made them feel small. My father never went to college, working his way up from mail clerk to claims adjuster through pure determination. My mother spent 40 years as a bank teller, proud of her work, but always wondering what she might have accomplished with more education. Tommy struggled academically his entire life, watching his younger brother excel effortlessly at everything that challenged him. What I didn't understand was how deep their resentment had grown, or how far they would go to bring me down to their level. I thought family meant supporting each other's dreams, celebrating each other's achievements, lifting each other up when someone stumbled. I never imagined they would conspire to destroy the very thing I'd worked my entire life to build. The climactic twist that emerged during the hearing's first day was devastating in its calculated cruelty. My own family, people who had raised me, supported my dreams, cheered my accomplishments, had spent months systematically gathering evidence to prove I was a fraud. Not because they genuinely believed I was unqualified, but because my qualifications made them feel inadequate about their own lives. They weren't trying to protect the public from a dangerous imposter. They were trying to tear down someone whose success reminded them of their own perceived failures. As Judge Harrison's confused expression showed, nothing about this case made sense from a legal perspective. A lawyer with impeccable credentials, spotless record, and brilliant courtroom performance doesn't suddenly become an unqualified fraud. But from an emotional perspective, from the twisted logic of resentment and jealousy, their actions made perfect sense. They had decided that if they couldn't rise to my level, they would drag me down to theirs. The depth of my family's betrayal became clear as the hearing progressed and evidence emerged. My brother Tommy had spent months befriending my secretary Linda Walsh, a single mother of two who worked part-time while finishing her paralegal certification through community college night classes. Tommy presented himself as a caring, supportive boyfriend, taking Linda to dinner at the Olive Garden, bringing flowers to the office, playing catch with her 8-year-old son Marcus in the park behind our building. But Tommy's affection was entirely calculated. He convinced Linda that I was practicing law without proper credentials, feeding her doubts about my qualifications by questioning why such a successful lawyer would choose to work in a small town instead of a big city firm. "Doesn't it seem strange," he would whisper during their private moments, "that Josh never talks about law school? Real lawyers love sharing war stories about their professors and classmates." Linda, already insecure about her own lack of formal legal education, began second-guessing everything she observed. When I worked late preparing complex appeals, Tommy suggested I was desperately trying to teach myself law from textbooks. When clients praised my performance, he implied they were too naive to recognize incompetent representation. Gradually, Linda became convinced that her employer was a dangerous fraud who needed to be exposed before innocent people got hurt. The manipulation escalated when Tommy convinced Linda to copy confidential client files, supposedly to gather evidence of my malpractice. She began staying after hours, photographing case documents with her phone and forwarding them to Tommy. She installed recording applications on the office phone system, capturing my conversations with clients and opposing counsel. Every strategy session, every legal argument, every moment of professional consultation was secretly monitored and transmitted to my enemies. But the most shocking revelation came when I discovered the hidden recording device Tommy had planted during one of his friendly visits to my office. While Linda distracted me with questions about a client's case, Tommy excused himself to use the bathroom and instead planted a tiny digital recorder inside my desk lamp. For 3 months, every confidential conversation in my office was being recorded and analyzed by people determined to find evidence of incompetence or fraud. The conspiracy extended far beyond my immediate family. Attorney Bradley Hoffman, from the established firm Hoffman and Associates, had encouraged and orchestrated much of the complaint against me. Hoffman's practice had dominated Cedar Falls legal work for 20 years before my arrival. My success defending cases and attracting clients had cut significantly into his business, especially among working-class families who previously had no choice but to accept his expensive services or represent themselves. Hoffman provided Tommy with legal terminology and procedural knowledge to make the complaint appear credible. He coached my family on what evidence would seem most damning to state bar investigators, helping them understand which accusations would trigger immediate suspension versus lengthy investigation. Hoffman even connected Tommy with Patricia Wells, a state bar investigator with a reputation for aggressive pursuit of allegedly unqualified practitioners. The coordination between these conspirators was meticulous and thorough. Tommy recorded dozens of phone calls between himself, our parents, and Hoffman discussing strategy for destroying my career. They analyzed my cases, looking for any decisions that could be mischaracterized as evidence of incompetence. They researched state bar disciplinary procedures to maximize the damage their complaint would cause to my reputation and livelihood. When I confronted Linda about her role in this betrayal, her composure completely shattered. She broke down sobbing in my office, confessing everything through tears that mixed regret with lingering confusion about my qualifications. "Tommy showed me pictures of your office," she whispered. "He said real Harvard graduates don't work above hardware stores. He said you probably bought your diploma online and were just pretending to be qualified." Linda revealed the promises Tommy had made to secure her cooperation. He told her they would marry once I was exposed and removed from practice. He promised to help her finish paralegal school and find work at a legitimate law firm. He painted himself as a hero, protecting the community from a dangerous fraud with Linda as his brave partner in seeking justice. The cruelest part was learning how Tommy had exploited Linda's own insecurities about legal education. She never completed her paralegal certification because she couldn't afford to stop working full-time. She felt intimidated by legal professionals with advanced degrees, constantly worried that her lack of formal training made her inadequate for law office work. Tommy weaponized these fears, convincing her that I was just as unqualified as she felt herself to be. "He made it sound like we were the same," Linda sobbed. "Two people pretending to know about law when we really didn't belong in this world. He said you would drag me down with you when the truth came out that I needed to protect myself by helping expose you first." The climactic twist of this section hit when I realized the sophistication of the evidence-gathering operation. This wasn't casual family resentment or simple jealousy. My family had transformed into calculated criminals, systematically violating attorney-client privilege, engaging in fraud, perjury, and conspiracy. They had recruited accomplices, developed long-term strategies, and executed a complex plan designed to completely destroy my professional life. Tommy's manipulation of Linda represented emotional abuse that left lasting scars on an innocent single mother, just trying to build a better life for her children. Hoffman's involvement revealed unethical competitive practices that violated every principle of professional responsibility. My parents' participation showed how deeply resentment could corrupt people I had loved and trusted my entire life. As I sat in that hearing room watching my family present their fabricated evidence, I understood that the people who raised me no longer existed. They had been replaced by strangers who wanted nothing more than to see me suffer for the crime of achieving success they felt was beyond their reach. The second day of the disciplinary hearing began with Tommy presenting what appeared to be compelling audio evidence of my alleged incompetence. He had carefully edited hours of recorded conversations to create brief clips where my voice sounded uncertain or hesitant about legal procedures. In reality, these moments came from discussions where I was teaching Linda about complex appellate procedures or explaining nuanced constitutional principles to clients. But through selective editing and manipulation, Tommy made these educational conversations sound like confused admissions of ignorance. "Listen to this," Tommy announced confidently to the panel, playing a recording where my voice said, "I'm not completely sure about the precedent here." What the recording didn't include was the rest of my sentence. "So let me research the most recent circuit court decisions to give you the strongest possible argument." Tommy had extracted 3 seconds from a 20-minute discussion about federal constitutional law, removing all context to make me sound incompetent rather than thorough. The panel members leaned forward, listening intently as Tommy presented recording after recording of similar manipulations. Each clip seemed to show a lawyer who didn't understand basic legal principles, who fumbled through simple procedures, who admitted uncertainty about fundamental concepts. The cumulative effect was devastating, painting a picture of someone clearly unqualified to represent clients in any legal matter. But the most shocking betrayal came when my mother Sarah took the witness stand. The woman who had bandaged my scraped knees helped with homework every night. Through high school, attended every graduation ceremony with tears of pride streaming down her face, looked directly at me, and began systematically lying under oath about my entire life. Josh always struggled academically. She testified, her voice steady and convincing. He barely graduated high school with a 2.5 grade point average. He never showed any interest in studying law or demonstrated the intellectual capacity for advanced education. When he suddenly claimed to have graduated from Harvard Law School, I knew something wasn't right. I stared at my mother in complete disbelief. She knew perfectly well that I had graduated valedictorian from Cedar Falls High School with a 4.0 grade point average. She had attended my graduation ceremony proudly, taking pictures as I received academic achievement awards in multiple subjects. She had helped me research colleges, driving me to visit campuses across the Midwest, bragging to neighbors about my acceptance to Harvard with a full academic scholarship. Sarah continued her perjury with increasing confidence. I never saw Josh study for any bar exam. He left town for 6 months claiming to attend law school, but I suspect he was just hiding somewhere until he could return with fake credentials. When I confronted him about his diploma, he became defensive and angry, which confirmed my suspicions that something wasn't legitimate about his education. The lies became more elaborate and detailed as Sarah presented fabricated evidence she claimed to have discovered in my personal belongings. She produced printed internet search results, allegedly from my home computer, showing searches for buy law degree online, fake bar exam certificates, and how to practice law without license. The documents appeared authentic, complete with dates and browser information that would convince any reasonable person of their legitimacy. Judge Harrison examined the search history printouts with growing concern. Other panel members whispered among themselves, clearly disturbed by mounting evidence suggesting systematic fraud. My defense attorney, Monica Rivera, struggled to counter such seemingly comprehensive documentation, especially when it came from my own family members, who presumably had no motive to lie about their relative. The hearing reached its emotional climax when Sarah produced what appeared to be a handwritten confession letter in my own handwriting. The document, written on my personal letterhead, contained a detailed admission of fabricating my entire legal education. The letter confessed to purchasing fraudulent diplomas from online degree mills, bribing officials to create fake bar exam records, and maintaining elaborate deceptions to fool clients and colleagues about my qualifications. I found this letter hidden in Josh's bedroom. Sarah testified, her voice breaking with apparent emotion. He had written it like he was planning to confess everything, but never found the courage to tell the truth. When I read it, I knew we had to protect the community from someone who was endangering innocent people with his lies. As I examined the confession letter, my blood ran cold. The handwriting was absolutely perfect, indistinguishable from my own natural script. Every loop, every curve, every distinctive characteristic of my penmanship had been flawlessly replicated. The letter included personal details that only family members would know, references to childhood memories, and private conversations that gave it authenticity no outside forger could achieve. But I knew with absolute certainty that I had never written those words. Someone in my family had studied my handwriting with scientific precision, practicing for months to create this devastating piece of evidence. The letter represented hundreds of hours of preparation, careful analysis of my writing patterns, and methodical practice to achieve such perfect duplication. The panel's reaction to the confession letter was immediately obvious. Judge Harrison's expression shifted from confusion to disappointment and anger. Other members shook their heads in disgust, clearly convinced they were dealing with an elaborate fraud perpetrated against unsuspecting clients and the legal system itself. Monica Rivera looked stunned, realizing that defending against seemingly authentic written confession would be nearly impossible. Tommy smiled triumphantly from his seat in the gallery, nodding to our parents with satisfaction. They had successfully convinced respected legal professionals that their own son was a dangerous criminal who had been deceiving everyone for years. The conspiracy had reached its intended goal, complete destruction of my reputation, career, and future prospects. The climactic twist of this section was the realization that my family's betrayal went far deeper than simple resentment or jealousy. They had committed multiple felonies, including perjury, fraud, and conspiracy, all while maintaining perfect facades of concerned relatives, protecting society from a dangerous imposter. Sarah's willingness to lie under oath about fundamental facts of my life showed how completely their love had transformed into hatred. The forged confession letter demonstrated premeditation and criminal sophistication that spoke to months of careful planning and preparation. As I sat listening to my own mother destroy my life with calculated lies, I understood that the family I remembered from childhood had never really existed. The people who claimed to love me had always harbored resentments and jealousies that were waiting for the right moment to explode into destructive action. My success hadn't created their hatred. It had simply given them a target worthy of their rage. After 3 hours of deliberation, the State Bar Disciplinary Panel returned with their devastating verdict. Judge Harrison's voice carried the weight of absolute authority as he announced their decision. Based on the compelling evidence presented regarding fraudulent credentials and systematic deception of clients, this panel votes unanimously to immediately suspend the law license of Josh Manning, pending comprehensive investigation by state bar authorities. The words hit me like physical blows. Immediate suspension meant my legal career was over effective instantly. All active cases had to be transferred to other attorneys within 48 hours. My law practice, built through 3 years of dedicated work, helping working-class families, would cease to exist by the end of the week. The reputation I had earned through countless late-night successful defenses and grateful clients would be forever destroyed by accusations of fraud. Furthermore, Judge Harrison continued, the nature of these allegations requires notification of all past clients about potential inadequate representation. The Ohio Attorney Registration Database will list your status as suspended pending investigation of fraudulent practice, which will be visible to anyone conducting background checks for legal services. Monica Rivera squeezed my shoulder sympathetically, but her gesture felt hollow against the magnitude of professional destruction unfolding around me. Years of Harvard education, federal clerkship experience, and courtroom victories had been erased by my family's lies in a single afternoon. The legal career I had dreamed about since childhood, worked toward through college and law school, and built with genuine passion for justice, was gone. As I gathered my briefcase and prepared to leave the hearing room, I noticed Tommy, Sarah, and Carl embracing each other in the hallway outside. Their faces showed unmistakable satisfaction, the look of people who had accomplished exactly what they set out to achieve. They weren't celebrating justice or protecting the community. They were celebrating the successful destruction of someone they claimed to love. Local newspaper reporter Jennifer Walsh waited outside the courthouse, with a photographer having been alerted about the hearing by someone who wanted maximum publicity for my humiliation. "Mr. Manning," she called out, "do you have any comment about your license suspension? Were you actually practicing law illegally for 3 years?" I walked past without responding, but the damage was already done. By evening, the Cedar Falls Gazette's website featured a prominent article titled, "Local Attorney Suspended for Alleged Fraud," complete with my law school graduation photo and details about the family members who had courageously exposed my deception. The story painted Tommy and my parents as heroes who had risked family relationships to protect innocent clients from a dangerous imposter. Returning to my law office felt like visiting a crime scene. The building owner, George Peterson, met me at the entrance with obvious discomfort. Josh, I'm really sorry about this, but I got calls from 3 different clients within an hour of the news breaking. People are scared they might have legal problems because of what happened. I can't have that kind of publicity associated with my building. Peterson handed me a formal eviction notice requiring vacation of the premises within 72 hours. The lease termination clause had been triggered by criminal activity or professional misconduct that damaged the building's reputation. 3 years of rent payments, professional behavior, and positive relationships with other tenants meant nothing against the fear created by fraud allegations. My phone began ringing constantly as clients learned about the suspension. Mrs. Patterson called first, her voice shaking with confusion and fear. "Josh, honey, I saw the news online. Does this mean the work you did saving my house wasn't legitimate? Are they going to take my home away again because you weren't a real lawyer?" Each client call felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Bobby Richardson, the mechanic I had saved from wrongful conviction, wanted to know if his acquittal could be overturned due to inadequate representation. The Wilson family, whose medical malpractice case I had been preparing for months, panicked about starting over with new counsel just weeks before filing deadline. Elderly clients who trusted me with their wills and estate planning worried that documents I had prepared might be invalid. Within 6 hours of the suspension announcement, First National Bank froze my personal and business accounts, pending state bar investigation. Account manager Dorothy Simmons, who had helped me establish business banking 3 years earlier, explained apologetically that suspected fraud triggered automatic protective measures for the bank's reputation. "We'll need written verification from state bar authorities that all financial irregularities have been resolved before any accounts can be reactivated." My apartment landlord, Kevin Murphy, appeared at my door that evening with immediate payment demands. "I need current month's rent, plus 3 months security deposit by tomorrow morning, or I'm starting eviction proceedings," he announced nervously. Property management company says having tenants under criminal investigation creates liability issues they can't accept. But the most devastating blow came when former Harvard Law Review classmates began distancing themselves from any association with my name or career. David Chen, now a federal prosecutor in Chicago, sent a brief text message. "Josh, I need to ask that you not mention our law school relationship in any public statements. This situation could affect my security clearance review." Other classmates simply stopped responding to calls and messages, entirely treating me like someone with a contagious disease. Harvard Law School's admissions office called requesting detailed explanation of current circumstances. "We've received inquiries from media outlets about your educational credentials," explained Assistant Dean Margaret Foster. "The law school needs to protect its reputation and verify that our records accurately reflect your academic achievement. Please provide documentation proving these allegations are false, or we may need to review your degree status." That evening, sitting alone in my stripped law office, looking at diplomas, my family had convinced everyone we're fraudulent. I contemplated abandoning everything, and starting over somewhere my name meant nothing. Cedar Falls, the hometown I had returned to serve, now felt poisonous and hostile. Former friends avoided eye contact on the street. Neighbors whispered when I walked past. Local business owners who once welcomed me warmly now viewed me with suspicion and disgust. The weight of injustice felt crushing and absolute. I had dedicated my legal career to fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves, defending the innocent, protecting the vulnerable from powerful predators. Now, I was being destroyed by the very people who should have supported and protected me. The family that raised me to believe in truth and justice had used lies and deception to steal everything I had worked to achieve. The climactic twist of this darkest moment was the realization that surrender might be my only rational option. Fighting back would require resources I no longer possessed, time I couldn't afford, and emotional strength that felt completely depleted. My family had calculated correctly that destroying my reputation would make resistance seem futile. Who would believe a disgraced lawyer's claims of innocence when his own parents testified against him? As I sat in darkness, staring at my law diploma, I understood why some people simply disappear rather than endure public humiliation and professional destruction. Starting over in a different state, with a different name, seemed easier than trying to prove innocence against such overwhelming fabricated evidence. The Josh Manning who had graduated from Harvard with dreams of justice was already dead. The question was whether anyone could rise from his ashes. Instead of surrendering to despair, something deep inside me refused to accept defeat. Maybe it was my Harvard training that taught me to analyze problems systematically. Maybe it was 3 years of fighting for innocent clients who faced overwhelming odds. Or maybe it was pure stubborn determination inherited from my grandfather, who never backed down from bullies, even when the fight seemed hopeless. I spent my first night of suspension reviewing every piece of evidence my family had presented, searching for inconsistencies that might reveal cracks in their carefully constructed lies. The forged confession letter bothered me most because creating such perfect handwriting duplication required specialized skills and equipment that Tommy shouldn't possess. The internet search history also seemed suspicious because the dates coincided with periods when I was traveling for court appearances, making it impossible for me to be at home using my computer. The next morning, I hired private investigator Marcus Thompson, a former FBI agent who specialized in fraud detection and criminal conspiracy cases. Thompson had built his reputation exposing corporate embezzlement schemes and political corruption throughout Ohio. His initial fee depleted my remaining savings, but his experience investigating sophisticated criminal enterprises gave me hope that truth could still prevail over deception. "I've seen family betrayal cases before," Thompson explained during our first meeting, "but never anything this elaborate. Your family didn't just lie about you. They committed multiple felonies and recruited accomplices to help destroy your life. That level of coordination suggests months of planning and criminal sophistication that goes way beyond simple jealousy." Thompson's investigation began by examining Tommy's background for any history of fraud or deception. Within 72 hours, he uncovered shocking information that explained my brother's expertise in document forgery and identity manipulation. 3 years earlier, Tommy had been arrested for credit card fraud and identity theft involving 14 victims across 3 counties. He had created fake identification documents, forged signatures on financial instruments, and manipulated computer records to steal over $37,000 from unsuspecting targets. The criminal charges had been dropped as part of a plea agreement where Tommy provided information about his criminal associates in exchange for probation and community service. But court records showed that law enforcement had confiscated sophisticated equipment from Tommy's apartment, including computer software for analyzing handwriting patterns, professional-grade printers for creating false documents, and identity theft materials that explained how he could forge my confession letter with such devastating accuracy. "Your brother is a career criminal," Thompson informed me grimly. "He learned document forgery techniques during his previous arrest and has been practicing identity theft for years. Creating that fake confession letter wasn't beginner's luck. He's an experienced fraud specialist who knows exactly how to fabricate evidence convincingly enough to fool legal professionals." Thompson's investigation also revealed Bradley Hoffman's serious financial troubles and ethics violations that provided clear motives for destroying my legal practice. The State Bar had been secretly investigating Hoffman and Associates for misappropriation of client trust funds, totaling over $120,000. Hoffman faced potential criminal prosecution, permanent disbarment, and civil lawsuits from victimized clients whose money had been stolen to cover business expenses and personal debts. "Hoffman's law firm was going bankrupt," Thompson explained. "He needed cash immediately and saw eliminating your competition as a way to recover lost business while buying time to resolve his financial problems. Court records show he promised Tommy $50,000 to successfully destroy your practice money Hoffman planned to steal from remaining client trust accounts." The conspiracy extended even deeper when Thompson discovered that State Bar investigator Patricia Wells had received suspicious financial payments from Hoffman's firm just days before my disciplinary hearing. Wells had been paid $20,000 as a consulting fee for expediting high-priority investigations, which explained why my case received immediate attention, while Hoffman's ethics violations remained buried in bureaucratic delays. This wasn't just family betrayal, Thompson concluded. This was organized corruption involving criminal conspiracy, bribery of public officials, and systematic fraud designed to destroy your career while protecting Hoffman from prosecution for his own crimes. Wells fast-tracked your suspension while making sure Hoffman's investigation disappeared into administrative limbo. Thompson's most damaging discovery came from security footage at my office building that Peterson had forgotten to mention. The building's surveillance system had recorded Tommy's illegal entry into my office on multiple occasions when he claimed to be visiting socially. Video evidence showed Tommy systematically searching my desk, photographing confidential files, and installing hidden recording equipment, while Linda unknowingly provided cover by distracting me with work questions. Credit card records revealed Tommy's purchases of professional surveillance equipment, handwriting analysis software, and document forgery materials in the months leading up to his complaint. Phone records documented dozens of calls between Tommy, our parents, and Hoffman, proving coordination and premeditation in their conspiracy to destroy my career. The evidence that broke the case wide open came when Thompson convinced Linda Walsh to cooperate with authorities by explaining how she had been manipulated and used by people who never cared about her welfare. Linda admitted that Tommy had never genuinely loved her, but had targeted her specifically because she worked in my office and felt insecure about her legal education. Tommy made me feel stupid and worthless, Linda confessed through tears. He convinced me that Josh was just as fake as I felt myself to be. He said we were both pretending to belong in the legal world when we really didn't have the qualifications. He made it seem like helping expose Josh would protect me from being dragged down when the truth came out. Linda provided Thompson with audio recordings Tommy had given her as proof of my incompetence. But when examined by forensic experts, the recordings showed clear evidence of digital editing and manipulation. Background noise patterns, voice inflection analysis, and timeline reconstruction proved that Tommy had taken lengthy educational conversations and extracted brief segments to create false impressions of confusion and incompetence. The climactic twist emerged when Linda revealed that Tommy had confessed everything to her during their final conversation before the disciplinary hearing. Feeling guilty about the pain they were causing, Linda had secretly recorded Tommy admitting the entire conspiracy was motivated by resentment over my success and their desire to bring me down to their level. Josh thinks he's better than us, Tommy's voice clearly stated on Linda's recording. Harvard Law School, perfect grades, successful practice, helping all these grateful clients. He makes the whole family look like failures just by existing. Once we destroy his career, maybe he'll understand what it feels like to be ordinary people who never had anything handed to them. Thompson presented this evidence to me with satisfaction, mixed with disgust. Your family didn't report you to protect the public, he concluded. They committed serious felonies to destroy someone whose success reminded them of their own perceived failures. This isn't about law license fraud. This is about criminal conspiracy, driven by jealousy and resentment that transformed into hatred. Armed with comprehensive evidence of the conspiracy against me, I understood that the family I had loved and trusted had never really existed. They had been planning my destruction for months while pretending to support my career. But now, I had the tools to fight back and expose their crimes to the same legal system they had tried to manipulate. The battle for my reputation and career was about to begin. Armed with Thompson's devastating evidence, I immediately requested an emergency hearing with the State Bar Disciplinary Panel to present proof of criminal conspiracy and perjured testimony. Judge Harrison initially showed reluctance to reopen what seemed like a settled matter, but his attitude changed completely when I provided preliminary evidence of Brady Hoffman's bribery scheme and Patricia Wells's corrupt investigation practices. "These are extremely serious allegations, Mr. Manning," Judge Harrison said, after reviewing Thompson's preliminary report. "If proven accurate, they suggest systematic corruption of our disciplinary process and criminal fraud perpetrated by multiple parties. I'm scheduling an emergency hearing for Friday morning to examine this evidence thoroughly." The emergency hearing began with my systematic presentation of Thompson's investigation results. First, I presented security footage showing Tommy's illegal entries into my office, complete with timestamps, proving he had lied under oath about never accessing my confidential files. Panel members watched in stunned silence, as video clearly showed my brother searching through client documents, photographing sensitive materials, and installing hidden recording equipment. This video evidence proves that Tommy Manning committed burglary, invasion of privacy, and violation of attorney-client privilege. I explained to the panel. His testimony about discovering evidence of fraud was perjured because he illegally stole that information through criminal acts specifically intended to damage my practice and reputation. Next, I presented financial records proving Hoffman's bribery of Patricia Wells and his promise to pay Tommy for successfully destroying my career. Bank statements showed Wells had received $20,000 from Hoffman's client trust account the day before my original hearing money that had been stolen from legitimate client funds to corrupt the investigation process. Bradley Hoffman was facing criminal prosecution for embezzling client money. I continued, so he orchestrated this conspiracy to eliminate me as competition while diverting attention from his own crimes. He coached my family members in how to fabricate evidence, provided legal terminology to make their accusations seem credible, and bribed the investigating official to ensure my case received priority treatment, while his own ethics violations remained buried. Judge Harrison's expression showed increasing anger as the scope of corruption became clear. "Mr. Manning, are you alleging that a sitting state bar investigator accepted bribes to manipulate our disciplinary process while protecting another attorney from legitimate investigation?" "Yes, Your Honor. Patricia Wells expedited my case through improper channels while ensuring that Hoffman's trust fund violations never reached disciplinary review. She violated her oath of office and corrupted the entire process to protect someone who was literally stealing money from vulnerable clients." The most devastating evidence came when I played Linda Walsh's secret recording of Tommy's confession about the conspiracy's true motives. Panel members listened in shocked silence, as my brother's voice clearly admitted that destroying my career was motivated by jealousy and resentment, rather than any genuine concern about public safety. "Josh thinks he's better than us." Tommy's recorded voice filled the hearing room. "Harvard Law School, perfect grades, successful practice, helping all these grateful clients. He makes the whole family look like failures just by existing. Once we destroy his career, maybe he'll understand what it feels like to be ordinary people who never had anything handed to them." Judge Harrison stopped the recording and stared at me with obvious sympathy. "Mr. Manning, this recording suggests your family filed a false complaint motivated purely by personal resentment, rather than legitimate concerns about professional competence. Is that your understanding of their actions?" "Yes, Your Honor. Thompson's investigation proved that every piece of evidence against me was either fabricated, stolen through illegal means, or taken out of context to create false impressions. My family committed multiple felonies to destroy my reputation because my success made them feel inadequate about their own lives." The hearing's climactic moment came when I called Sarah Manning to the witness stand and confronted her directly with evidence of her perjured testimony. Under oath with criminal prosecution for perjury hanging over her head, my mother's confidence completely evaporated as I presented proof that contradicted every lie she had told about my education and qualifications. "Mrs. Manning," I said, looking directly into her eyes, "you testified under oath that I graduated high school with a 2.5 grade point average and showed no academic aptitude. I'm now presenting your personal photo album containing pictures of my valedictorian graduation ceremony, where I received academic achievement awards in 4 subjects. Can you explain why your sworn testimony contradicted photographic evidence in your own possession. Sarah's composure shattered as she stared at pictures she had taken herself, showing me receiving academic honors she had proudly documented. I don't remember. Tommy told me. You also testified that you never saw me study for the bar exam and suspected I was hiding somewhere instead of attending law school. I'm presenting airline tickets, hotel receipts, and Harvard Law School records showing you visited me in Cambridge twice during my final semester, attending my graduation ceremony and law review celebration dinner. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? My mother broke down completely sobbing as the weight of her perjury became undeniable. Tommy said, "He convinced me that Josh was too good to be true. He said successful people from our background had to be cheating somehow. I thought we were protecting people from being hurt by committing perjury, conspiracy, and fraud against your own son." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Tommy made it sound like Josh was the criminal, like we were doing the right thing. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just felt so stupid around Josh's success, like I wasn't good enough to be his mother. Judge Harrison watched this exchange with obvious disgust. "Mrs. Manning, are you admitting that your previous testimony about your son's educational background was perjured?" "Yes," Sarah sobbed. "Everything I said was lies. Josh graduated valedictorian from high school summa cum laude from Harvard Law School and passed the bar exam with the highest score in state history. Tommy convinced me to lie because Josh's success made us feel like failures. I know how terrible that sounds, but it's the truth." Tommy maintained his denials until I presented the security footage of his break-ins and the forensic analysis of his edited audio recordings. Faced with overwhelming evidence of his criminal conspiracy, he finally admitted orchestrating the entire scheme to destroy my career out of resentment and jealousy. "Josh always had everything easy," Tommy confessed bitterly. "Perfect grades, scholarships, prestigious clerkships, successful practice. I worked construction my whole life while watching my little brother become everything I could never be. It wasn't fair that he got all the brains and opportunities while I got nothing." The climactic twist of this reversal came when Judge Harrison revealed that Patricia Wells was being arrested during our hearing on charges of corruption and bribery. FBI agents had simultaneously raided Hoffman's law office, seizing evidence of embezzled client funds and conspiracy to obstruct justice. The entire corrupt network that had destroyed my career was collapsing under criminal investigation. "Mr. Manning," Judge Harrison said solemnly, "this panel offers you our sincere apologies for the grave injustice you have suffered. Your family's conspiracy represents a betrayal of trust that strikes at the very foundation of our legal system. We will be recommending criminal prosecution for all parties involved in this fraud." But beyond vindication and justice, I felt something deeper, profound sadness that the people who raised me had fallen so far from the values they once taught me. Their jealousy and resentment had transformed them into criminals willing to destroy their own child for the crime of achieving success they felt was beyond their reach. Judge Harrison's final verdict delivered complete vindication and justice that exceeded anything I could have hoped for during my darkest moments. Based on overwhelming evidence of criminal conspiracy, perjured testimony, and corruption of the disciplinary process, he announced formally, "This panel unanimously votes to immediately reinstate Josh Manning's law license, with a formal apology from the Ohio State Bar for the grave injustice he has suffered." The reinstatement came with unprecedented additional measures designed to repair the damage caused by false accusations. The State Bar issued public statements to all media outlets that had covered my suspension, clearly establishing that I had been the victim of criminal fraud rather than a perpetrator of professional misconduct. My attorney registration status was updated to show license in good standing, with commendation for exemplary service to the community. But the personal vindication felt secondary to the criminal justice being served against those who had betrayed me. Tommy was arrested on charges, including conspiracy, fraud, burglary, identity theft, and perjury, facing up to 15 years in federal prison for his sophisticated criminal enterprise. The evidence Thompson had gathered proved Tommy had planned my destruction for over a year, systematically developing the skills and gathering the resources necessary to fabricate convincing evidence of professional incompetence. Bradley Hoffman faced even more serious consequences as FBI investigation revealed the full extent of his financial crimes and corruption. He had embezzled over $250,000 from client trust accounts, bribed multiple state bar officials to protect his practice from scrutiny, and orchestrated criminal conspiracies against legitimate competitors. Federal prosecutors announced they would seek maximum sentences due to Hoffman's abuse of his position as an officer of the court. Patricia Wells was arrested during our hearing and charged with bribery, corruption of public office, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Her systematic protection of Hoffman, while aggressively pursuing fabricated cases against his competitors, revealed institutional corruption that prompted comprehensive investigation of state bar disciplinary procedures. Wells faced 10 years in federal prison and permanent prohibition from any government employment. Sarah Manning faced perjury charges, but understanding her manipulation by Tommy and Hoffman, I requested leniency from prosecutors in exchange for her complete cooperation with ongoing investigations. My mother's testimony helped authorities understand how the conspiracy had recruited accomplices through emotional manipulation and false promises of protection from legal consequences. The criminal proceedings revealed the breathtaking scope of psychological manipulation my family had endured. Tommy had spent months convincing our parents that my success was somehow fraudulent or undeserved, feeding their insecurities about education and social status, until they genuinely believed I was harming innocent people through deceptive practices. Their love for me had been gradually transformed into fear and resentment through systematic emotional abuse by someone they trusted. Local media coverage shifted dramatically as the truth emerged. The Cedar Falls Gazette published front-page stories exposing the conspiracy and celebrating my vindication. Local attorney victim of family betrayal became a national news story that highlighted the psychological damage caused by resentment and the importance of supporting, rather than sabotaging, family members' achievements. Mrs. Patterson and other clients returned to my practice with profound apologies for doubting my qualifications. "I should have known better," Mrs. Patterson said through tears when she called to rehire my services. "You saved my home and treated me with such kindness. I'm ashamed that I believed lies about someone who had only helped me." George Peterson not only allowed me to return to my office space, but offered 6 months of free rent as compensation for the trauma caused by hasty eviction. "I should have supported you instead of panicking at the first sign of trouble," he admitted. "You've been nothing but professional and honorable in all your dealings with tenants and clients." But the most meaningful vindication came when Harvard Law School called with an unexpected opportunity. Dean Robert Chen explained that the law school had been following my case and was impressed by my skillful handling of my own legal defense under extreme emotional duress. "Josh, we've been looking for someone to teach a new course on legal ethics and professional responsibility," Dean Chen explained. "Your experience being victimized by unethical practices, combined with your methodical exposure of corruption and fraud, makes you uniquely qualified to teach students about protecting the integrity of our profession. Would you be interested in joining our faculty as an adjunct professor?" The offer to teach at Harvard while maintaining my practice in Cedar Falls felt like validation that my decision to serve working-class clients rather than pursue corporate law had been correct all along. I could help train the next generation of lawyers to recognize and combat the kinds of unethical behavior that had nearly destroyed my career. However, the deepest resolution came through my choice of forgiveness over vengeance. When Sarah was released on bond pending trial, I visited her in the small apartment she now rented after losing the family home due to legal expenses. She looked older, broken by guilt and shame over what her actions had cost everyone she claimed to love. "Josh, I know you can never forgive me, she whispered, unable to meet my eyes. I destroyed my own son because I felt stupid and worthless around your success. Tommy made me believe that bringing you down would somehow make us feel better about ourselves, but it just made everything worse. Mom, I said gently, I understand that Tommy manipulated your insecurities and fears. You made terrible choices, but they came from feeling inadequate rather than genuine malice. I'm going to help you get the best possible legal representation, and I hope you'll get counseling to understand why someone else's success made you feel like a failure. My offer to provide legal assistance for her defense brought fresh tears. Why would you help me after what I did to you? Because despite everything that happened, you're still my mother. And because I learned something important from this whole experience, success means nothing if you achieve it by hurting other people, but it means everything when you use it to help people who are struggling. The life lesson that emerged from this painful experience was profound and transformative. I realized that my family's betrayal had stemmed from their belief that life was a zero-sum game, where one person's success automatically diminished everyone else's worth. They couldn't celebrate my achievements because they interpreted them as evidence of their own failures. True success, I learned, comes not from proving superiority over others, but from using whatever advantages life provides to lift up people who need help. My Harvard education, legal skills, and professional opportunities were gifts that carried responsibilities to serve others, rather than credentials to lord over family members who lacked similar advantages. I decided to establish the Manning Family Educational Foundation, using money recovered from Hoffman's restitution payments, to provide scholarships for first-generation college students from working-class families. The foundation would help people like my parents overcome the educational barriers that had made them feel inferior, rather than proud of their son's accomplishments. Tommy's criminal conviction led to genuine remorse and personal transformation during his imprisonment. He began taking college courses, learning about the psychology of resentment and jealousy that had driven his destructive behavior. When he was released, after serving 4 years, I helped him find employment and supported his efforts to rebuild relationships with our parents based on honesty rather than manipulation. The experience taught me that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or excusing harmful behavior, but it does require understanding the pain and insecurity that motivate people to hurt others. My family's betrayal had nearly destroyed my career, but it ultimately strengthened my commitment to using legal skills for healing rather than revenge. 6 months after my vindication, I split my time between teaching legal ethics at Harvard and maintaining my practice in Cedar Falls. Students learned about professional responsibility through real-world examples of corruption and fraud, while my local clients benefited from the expertise gained through surviving systematic persecution. The most satisfying moment came when Mrs. Patterson attended my first guest lecture at Harvard, telling law students about the young attorney who had saved her home and then forgiven the family members who tried to destroy him. Real lawyers, she told those future attorneys, don't just win cases. They show people how to be better than their worst impulses. As I reflect on this journey from betrayal to vindication to forgiveness, I understand that the greatest victory wasn't proving my innocence or seeing my enemies punished. The greatest victory was learning to transform pain into purpose, to use suffering as motivation for helping others, rather than seeking revenge. Family relationships can survive even the most devastating betrayals when built on genuine love, rather than conditional approval. Success achieved through destroying others ultimately destroys the perpetrator, but success achieved through lifting others up creates lasting fulfillment for everyone involved. The legal profession exists to serve justice, but true justice requires both accountability for wrongdoing and compassion for human weakness. We become our best selves not by proving we're better than people who hurt us, but by showing them how they can become better than their worst mistakes. Have you ever faced betrayal by people you trusted most? How did you find the strength to forgive without forgetting the lessons learned through pain? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about overcoming family conflicts and choosing healing over revenge. If this story resonated with your own experiences of injustice and redemption, please hit the like button to show your support. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges with courage and grace. And please share this video with anyone who might benefit from seeing how forgiveness can transform both victims and perpetrators of betrayal. Thank you for taking this emotional journey with me, and remember that your greatest victories often come not from defeating enemies, but from helping them become allies in building a better world for everyone.